Grandpa, I am at the police station. My stepfather beat me, but he is telling them I attacked him. My mom does not believe me. Those desperate words whispered into the phone at 2 a.m. shattered my world. When I walked into the precinct 20 minutes later, the desk sergeant went pale. He dropped his pen and stammered, "I am sorry. Captain Sullivan, I did not know he was your blood. He should have known. Because by the time I am done with them, they will wish they had never touched a hair on my grandson's head." Before I continue this story, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to a bully to protect the ones you love. The red digital clock on my nightstand read 2:13 a.m. when the landline rang. It was a shrill, violent sound in the dead silence of my cabin. I do not get social calls. At my age and with my past, a call at this hour only means one thing: trouble. I picked up the receiver, my hand steady. I heard a jagged intake of breath, then a voice so broken I almost didn't recognize it. "Grandpa, help me." It was Lucas, my 16-year-old grandson. He was sobbing, trying to keep his voice down. "Grandpa, please come." Derek beat me again. He threw me against the wall. "But the police are here. They are arresting me. They say I assaulted an officer. Mom is screaming at me. She says I am on drugs. I am not, Grandpa. I swear." I did not ask him if he was sure. I did not ask for details. I simply said, "Say nothing, Lucas. Do not sign anything. I am coming." I hung up and moved with the muscle memory of a man who spent 30 years hunting wolves in sheep's clothing. I pulled on my old Carhartt jacket, the one with the frayed collar, and slipped a small, high-fidelity digital recorder into the inside pocket. I checked the battery. Full. I grabbed the keys to my 2005 Ford F-150. It looks like a piece of junk to the neighbors, just like I look like a washed-up retiree. That is exactly how I like it. Underestimating me is the first mistake everyone makes. I drove through the sleet, my tires crunching on the black ice covering the roads of District 4. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. I wasn't speeding. I wasn't panicking. I was calculating. Derek Lawson, my son-in-law. A police sergeant with a chest full of commendations and a smile that could sell ice to an Eskimo. To the world, he was a hero. To my daughter Rachel, he was a savior. But I had seen the way Lucas flinched when Derek raised a hand to scratch his nose. I had seen the bruises Rachel covered with heavy makeup. I had stayed silent too long, respecting my daughter's boundaries, hoping I was wrong. Tonight, that silence ended. I pulled into the precinct lot, parking my rusted truck next to the shiny patrol cars. I walked through the double doors, shaking the ice off my coat. The scene inside was a piece of theater directed by the devil himself. Derek was sitting in the middle of the squad room, holding an ice pack to his nose. He looked tragic, heroic. A few uniformed officers were patting him on the back, offering him coffee. And there in the corner, cuffed to a metal bench, was Lucas. He looked small, shivering in his thin t-shirt. His lip was split and his left eye was swelling shut. Standing over him was my daughter Rachel. She looked frantic, her hair wild, her eyes manic. She was screaming at him. "You ungrateful little animal, you tried to kill him, after everything he has done for us. You are on drugs, aren't you? Tell them what you took, tell them." I stepped into the light. A young rookie officer I didn't recognize stepped in front of me, hand on his belt. "You can't be back here, old man. This is a restricted area. Go sit in the lobby." I didn't stop. I didn't even look at him. I looked straight at the lieutenant sitting behind the high desk. Lieutenant Miller, a man I had investigated 10 years ago for skimming drug money. He survived that inquiry by the skin of his teeth because a witness disappeared. He knew me. He knew my face. He knew my reputation as the former captain of internal affairs, the man who put more dirty cops in prison than criminals. Miller looked up. The color drained from his face instantly. He stood up so fast his chair knocked over. Captain Sullivan. The room went silent. The rookie looked confused, glancing between me and his boss. I didn't know, Miller stammered. I didn't know the boy was connected to you. I ignored him and walked straight to Derek. He looked up, his eyes narrowing. He didn't fear me yet. He was arrogant. He stood up, puffing out his chest, the badge gleaming on his uniform. Jack, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. This is a family matter. But since you are here, maybe you can talk some sense into your grandson. He came home high as a kite. I tried to calm him down, and he sucker-punched me. I have no choice. I have to press charges. Assault on a police officer. He is looking at juvenile detention, maybe worse. I looked at him. I looked at the ice pack. I looked at my grandson. Lucas was shaking his head, tears streaming down his face. No, Grandpa. He hit me because I found his phone. I didn't touch him. I curled up to protect myself, and his nose hit the doorframe when he tried to drag me out. Rachel rushed at me, grabbing my arm. Dad, don't you dare defend him. You always spoil him. Look at Derek. Look at his face, Tomuso. Lucas is out of control. He needs help. He needs to go away to a facility. Derek knows a place. I looked at my daughter. She was thin, too thin. Her eyes were darting around the room, terrified. She was parroting words that weren't hers. This wasn't my Sarah. This was a broken woman repeating a script. I gently but firmly removed her hand from my arm. I turned to Lieutenant Miller. Unlock him. Derek stepped forward. You have no authority here, Jack. You are retired. You are just a civilian. This boy is a danger to himself and others. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the desk. I dialed a number on speaker. It rang twice. A sleepy, gravelly voice answered. This better be good, Jack. It is Commissioner, I said. I am at the 4th Precinct. Sergeant Lawson claims my grandson assaulted him. Lawson has no visible injuries consistent with a punch, but he claims a broken nose. My grandson has defensive wounds on his arms and face. I am formally requesting a blood toxicology screen for the boy immediately. And Commissioner, I want the body cam footage from Sergeant Lawson's uniform pulled. Tonight. Derek went rigid. I saw the flicker of panic in his eyes. The body cam. Every officer is required to wear it. If he was on duty or if he intervened in a crime, it should be on. I wasn't wearing it, Derek stuttered. I was off duty. I was at home relaxing. Then it is just your word against his. I said, my voice low and cold. And since you are pressing charges as an officer, claiming assault on an officer, standard procedure dictates immediate drug testing for all parties involved to rule out influence. You know the protocol, Sergeant, unless you want to drop the charges right now. The room was deadly quiet. Derek stared at me. He knew. He knew that if he took a test, they might find the steroids he had been abusing for years, or maybe something else. He clenched his jaw. I am doing this for the family, Derek hissed. I don't want to ruin the kid's record. I will drop the charges, but he can't come back to my house. I won't feel safe. Fine, I said. I pointed at the rookie. Get the keys. Uncuff him. Now. The rookie fumbled with the keys and unlocked Lucas. My grandson collapsed into my arms, sobbing into my old coat. I held him tight, feeling his ribs. He was too skinny. He flinched when I touched his back. Rachel screamed, "You are stealing him. You are kidnapping my son. Derek, do something. He is ruining our family. He always does this. He hates us because we are happy." I looked at Rachel. Her face was twisted with a desperation that made my heart ache. She truly believed Derek was the victim. She was so deep in his web of lies she couldn't see the daylight. "Rachel," I said softly, "look at your son. Look at his face. He is 16. He weighs 120 pounds. Derek is 200 pounds of muscle. Do you really think Lucas beat him up? He was on drugs, Rachel spat. He has super strength when he is high. Derek told me. I looked at Lieutenant Miller. We are doing the blood test anyway, I said. I am paying for it privately at the hospital. I want a paper trail proving this boy is clean. And Miller, if I find out anyone touched him while he was in these cuffs, I will burn this precinct to the ground with lawsuits. Do you understand me? Miller nodded, swallowing hard. Understood, Captain. Take him. Just take him. I walked Lucas out to the truck. The cold air hit us, but it felt cleaner than the air inside that station. Rachel followed us to the parking lot, grabbing at the door handle as I put Lucas inside. If you take him, don't bring him back, she screamed, tears freezing on her cheeks. You are dead to me, Dad. You and that ungrateful brat. We don't need you. We have money. We have status. You are just a bitter old man in a rusted truck. I started the engine. I rolled down the window and looked at my only child. One day you will wake up, Rachel, and I just pray it is not too late. I drove away, watching her figure shrink in the rearview mirror. She was standing next to Derek, who had come out to put his arm around her. He was staring at my truck, his eyes cold, calculating. He wasn't defeated. He was just regrouping. We drove in silence for a while. The heater rattled, blowing warm air into the cab. Lucas was curled up in the passenger seat, holding his side. Grandpa, he whispered. Did you mean it? About the lawsuits. I meant every word, Lucas. But Mom said, she said you are broke. She said you live in that old cabin because you lost all Grandma's money. She said we have to be nice to Derek because he is the only one who can support us. I gripped the steering wheel. So that was the narrative. Jack Sullivan, the failed, impoverished retiree. It was a good cover. It kept people from asking for loans. It kept greedy relatives away. And it seemed it had kept my own daughter from respecting me. Lucas, I said. Your mother is confused. And as for money, let's just say we are going to be fine. We arrived at my cabin. It was simple. Wood stove, exposed beams, old furniture. But it was solid. I made Lucas hot chocolate and sat him down at the kitchen table. Take off your shirt, son, I said gently. I need to see. He hesitated, shame coloring his cheeks. He slowly pulled the t-shirt over his head. I felt the bile rise in my throat. His back was a map of pain. Old yellow bruises, fresh purple welts, and deep red marks that looked like burns. But there was something specific about the bruising on his ribs. They were long, uniform, rectangular marks. No knuckles make marks like that. I know what this is, I murmured. What Lucas asked, his voice trembling. He didn't hit you with his fists, did he? I asked. He used a phone book, or a towel wrapped around a baton. Lucas looked up, his eyes wide. How did you know? He wraps a wet towel around a wooden rod. He says it teaches me a lesson without leaving marks for the teachers to see. That is a police technique, I said, my voice flat. An old dirty police technique for beating suspects without leaving surface cuts. Derek wasn't just an abusive stepfather. He was a professional torturer. We are going to see a doctor tomorrow, I said. A private one. Not at the hospital where Derek has friends. I have a friend, Dr. Evans. He used to be the medical examiner. He knows how to document this. Grandpa Lucas said, grabbing my hand. Please don't make him madder. He has things on you. What kind of things? He talks on the phone sometimes. He thinks I can't hear. He says he is checking your accounts. He says he is waiting for you to have an accident. He says once you are gone, the trust fund unlocks. I froze. The trust fund. My wife Eleanor had left a substantial trust for Rachel to be distributed when I passed away, or if Rachel turned 40. But there was a clause. If Rachel was deemed incapacitated or under duress, The trusty me could withhold it. I had never told Rachel the amount. I wanted her to build her own life. I thought she believed it was small. Does he know how much is in it? I asked. He told Mom it is just a few thousand, Lucas said. But I heard him tell his friend on the phone that it is the jackpot. He is gambling, Grandpa. Online. I saw his screen. He is losing thousands every week. That is why he beat me tonight. I saw his balance. He is down $200,000. The pieces clicked into place. The abuse, the control over Rachel, the hostility towards me. Derek wasn't just a bad husband. He was a desperate man, a gambler in a hole so deep he couldn't see the sky. And he saw me as the only thing standing between him and a fortune he thought would save him. He had turned my daughter against me to isolate me. He was beating my grandson to break the boy's spirit so he wouldn't talk. And now he was waiting for me to die. I looked at the dark window at the snow falling outside. I wasn't just an old man in a cabin anymore. I was a captain again. And I had a case. Go to sleep, Lucas, I said, standing up. You are safe here. What are you going to do, Grandpa? I walked over to the old grandfather clock in the hallway and opened the bottom panel. Inside, hidden behind the pendulum, was a heavy steel safe. I spun the dial. Click, click, click. The door swung open. Inside lay a stack of thick file folders, a Glock 19 that I kept oiled and ready, and a ledger that contained the details of assets worth $12 million. I am going to verify a few things I said. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my armchair watching the perimeter cameras I had installed years ago. People thought I was paranoid. Tonight, I called it prepared. The next morning, the war began. It didn't start with shouting. It started with a knock on my door at 8 a.m. It was 2 deputies from the sheriff's department. Not the city police. The county boys. Derek's friends. Mr. Sullivan, the taller one, said, smirking, "We are here for a welfare check. We received an anonymous tip that you are holding a minor against his will and that you may be suffering from dementia. We need to speak to the boy." I stood in the doorway, blocking their view, my coffee mug in hand. "Do you have a warrant?" I asked. "We don't need a warrant for a welfare check, Jack. Move aside." I took a sip of coffee. "I am not holding anyone. My grandson is here under my temporary guardianship per the agreement made last night at the 4th Precinct. And as for my mental state, I can recite the 4th Amendment backwards if you like. Now, unless you have a court order signed by a judge, you are trespassing. Get off my porch." The deputy stepped forward, his hand resting on his taser. "Don't make this hard, old man. We can take you in for observation. 72-hour psych hold. Easy." They were trying to provoke me. If I resisted, they would arrest me. If they arrested me, they would take Lucas back to Derek. And if Lucas went back to Derek now after talking to me, he might not survive the night. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Officer, look up." The deputy frowned. "What? Look up." "To your left. In the birdhouse." He looked up. He saw the glint of the lens. That is a 4K camera with audio recording streaming directly to a cloud server. I have been broadcasting this interaction live to my attorney's office for the last 2 minutes. Say hello to Edward Mercer. You know Ed, don't you? The shark who sued the department last year for $3 million? The deputy's face went slack. He took his hand off his taser. "You are bluffing." "Try me," I said. "Step across that threshold and see how fast your pension disappears." They backed down. They muttered curses, got in their cruiser, and sped off. But I knew this was just the first wave. Derek was using the system he knew to crush me. He thought I was a relic. He thought I was alone. I went back inside. Lucas was standing in the hallway, pale as a ghost. "They are going to come back, aren't they?" "Yes," I said. "But next time we will be the ones knocking." I grabbed my phone and dialed Edward. Ed, it is time. I want to audit the trust fund. And Ed, hire a private investigator. I want to know everything about Sergeant Derek Lawson. Where he goes, who he talks to, and exactly how much money he owes. I hung up and looked at Lucas. Get dressed, son. We have work to do. We are going to the bank. To get money, Lucas asked. No, I said, putting on my coat. To set a trap. We drove into town. I parked the truck in front of the First National Bank. This was where Rachel's trust was held. I was the trustee, but I had given Rachel access to the interest payments years ago to help with bills. We walked into the manager's office. Mr. Henderson knew me. He greeted me with a nervous smile. Mr. Sullivan, good to see you. Is this about the withdrawal Mrs. Lawson requested? I stopped. Withdrawal, yes. Henderson said, shuffling papers. Your daughter called yesterday. She said you authorized a full liquidation of the trust principal for a medical emergency. She said you were too ill to come in person and that she had your power of attorney. My blood ran cold. They hadn't just planned to get rid of me. They had already started the paperwork. They forged my signature. Show me the document. I said, my voice dangerously calm. Henderson slid a paper across the desk. It was a power of attorney dated 3 days ago. The signature looked like mine, but it wasn't. The loop on the S was wrong. I didn't sign this, I said. Henderson turned white. But the notary seal. It is stamped by Paul Giamatti. He is a reputable notary. Paul Giamatti was Derek's cousin. Freeze the account, Henderson. Right now. If 1 cent leaves this bank, I will own this building. Do you understand? I understand, Jack. I will lock it down. I walked out of the bank, my mind racing. They were desperate. You don't forge a federal document unless you are out of time. Derek's debts must be due. The sharks were circling him, so he decided to feed me to them. As we walked back to the truck, my phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Dad, please bring Lucas home. Derek is sorry. We are a family. Don't make us call the authorities again. We love you. I stared at the screen. It was a lie. But it was also a plea. She was scared. She was trying to lure me in. Grandpa Lucas asked. I looked at him. I looked at the bruised boy who had been failed by everyone who should have protected him. Lucas, I said. Do you trust me? Yes. Good. Because we are going to do something dangerous. We are going to let them think they won. How I am going to rewrite my will, I said loudly, knowing that in a small town walls have ears. I am going to leave everything to Derek. Lucas looked at me like I was crazy. What? It is the only way to get him to show his true face, son. Wolves only attack when they think the sheep is sleeping. And tonight, I am going to play dead. I drove us to the law office of Edward Mercer. But I knew we were being followed. A black sedan had been on my tail since the bank. Derek's friends. Good, I thought. Let them watch. Let them see the old man panic. Let them report back that Jack Sullivan is running around town trying to fix his affairs. Because what they didn't know was that inside Edward's office, we weren't writing a will. We were drafting an affidavit for the FBI. And I was about to offer myself as the bait in a trap that would snap this family's secrets wide open. We arrived at the cabin, and the silence of the woods should have been comforting, but inside the truck, the air was thick with fear. Lucas was shivering, and it was not from the cold. I kept the heater running while I unlocked the front door, my eyes scanning the perimeter cameras automatically. Clear. I ushered him inside and locked the heavy deadbolt behind us. The sound of the lock clicking into place seemed to echo like a gunshot in the small room. I told him to sit on the old leather couch, and I went to the kitchen to wet a cloth. I needed to clean the blood off his face, but more importantly, I needed to see what was happening under that t-shirt. He was holding his left side with a rigidity that terrified me. I walked back into the living room and knelt in front of him. "Lucas," I said, keeping my voice low and steady, "I need to check your ribs. You are breathing shallow." I reached out slowly, telegraphing my movement so I would not startle him. But the moment my hand brushed the hem of his shirt, he violently recoiled. He scrambled backward on the sofa, pushing himself into the corner, his eyes wide and unfocused. "No," he gasped. "Don't touch it. Please don't touch it." It wasn't just pain. It was terror. Pure, primal terror. He looked at me, but he didn't see his grandfather. He saw another man coming to hurt him. He saw Derek. I pulled my hand back and sat on the floor, giving him space. "I am not him, Lucas. I am never going to hurt you. But if you have internal bleeding, we need to know." He was hyperventilating now. I watched his chest rise and fall in short, sharp hitches. He was guarding his torso like a wounded animal. I knew then that a bag of frozen peas and some aspirin wasn't going to cut it. I needed a professional, but I couldn't take him to the county hospital. Derek played poker with the ER-charged nurse every Tuesday night. If I took Lucas there, the medical report would disappear, or worse, it would be twisted to say the boy hurt himself. I stood up and grabbed my keys again. "Put your coat back on, son. We are going for a ride." Lucas looked at me with panic. "Where?" "To see an old friend. Someone who knows how to keep his mouth shut and his records private." We drove 40 minutes east, crossing the county line into the next jurisdiction. I watched the rearview mirror the entire way. No headlights followed us. The snow was coming down harder now, blurring the world into shades of gray and black. We pulled into the driveway of a modest ranch house set back from the road. Dr. Henry Evans had been the chief medical examiner for the state for 20 years, almost before he retired. He had seen every kind of evil one human could inflict on another. He owed me his career after I cleared his name in a botched investigation 10 years ago. I rang the bell and Evans answered in his robe. He didn't ask questions. He took one look at Lucas's face and stepped aside to let us in. "Basement Jack," he said. "Bring him down." Evans maintained a small private examination room in his basement for consulting work. It smelled of antiseptic and old paper. He washed his hands and put on gloves, his face settling into a mask of professional detachment. "Up on the table, son," Evans said. Lucas hesitated, looking at me. I nodded. "You are safe here, Lucas. Doc Evans is the best." Lucas climbed up, wincing as he lay back. Evans cut the t-shirt off with medical shears to avoid making Lucas raise his arms. When the fabric fell away, the room went deadly silent. I had expected bruises. I had expected black and blue marks. But Lucas's torso was a pale canvas of nothingness. There were no cuts. No large hematomas. Just a faint redness along the rib cage that looked almost like a sunburn. But Evans knew better. He ran his gloved hands gently over Lucas's abdomen. He pressed lightly on the left flank, and Lucas screamed a sound that tore through my soul. Evans stepped back and pulled a portable ultrasound machine from a cabinet. He squirted the cold gel onto Lucas's side and pressed the wand down. We both looked at the grainy black and white monitor. There, Evans pointed to a dark mass near the kidney. "That is fluid, blood. He has a renal contusion. And here." He moved the wand up. 2 hairline fractures on the floating ribs. I stared at the screen and then at Lucas's skin. "How is that possible?" I asked, my voice tight. "There is no mark on the skin." Evans turned off the machine and looked at me over his glasses. His eyes were cold and hard. "You know how, Jack. You saw this in the 80s. This is professional work." He walked over to a bookshelf and pulled out a thick, hard-bound medical dictionary. He slammed it onto the metal counter. "If I hit you with a bat, your skin splits and you bruise instantly," Evans said. But if I put a thick towel over your chest, or if I use a phone book to cushion the blow, the force disperses. The skin stays intact, but the shock wave travels through the soft tissue and crushes the organs against the bone. He looked at Lucas, who was shivering on the table. This wasn't a loss of temper, Jack. This wasn't a man lashing out in a blind rage. This was calculated. He wanted to cause maximum internal damage without leaving a mark that a school nurse or a social worker could see. He wanted the boy to be in agony every time he took a breath, but look perfectly fine on the outside. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Derek Lawson wasn't just a bad father. He was a sadist using his police training to torture a child. He knew exactly how hard to hit to hurt, but not kill. He knew exactly where to strike to hide the evidence. This is a technique we used to see in interrogation rooms 30 years ago, Evans said quietly. Before cameras, before accountability. Whoever did this to him knew exactly what they were doing. I looked at my grandson. He was staring at the ceiling, tears leaking from the corners of his eyes silently. He had been living in a war zone. He had been tortured in his own home, and his mother, my daughter, had stood by and watched. Or worse, she had convinced herself he deserved it. "Can you document this?" I asked Evans. "I am writing the report right now," Evans said. "I am taking imaging. I am noting the specific nature of the injuries consistent with blunt force trauma utilizing a dampening agent. This will hold up in court, Jack. This is a felony. Aggravated assault on a minor. Attempted grievous bodily harm." "Do it," I said. Evans worked for another hour. He wrapped Lucas's ribs, gave him a shot for the pain, and handed me a bottle of high-strength anti-inflammatories. "Keep him still," Evans said as we left. "If he urinates blood, you take him to a major trauma center immediately. Do not pass go. Do not call me. Just go. His kidney is on the edge, Jack. One more hit and he would have been on dialysis for the rest of his life." One more hit. The words echoed in my head as I drove us back to the cabin. The snow had stopped, leaving the world frozen and sharp. Lucas fell asleep against the window, the exhaustion and the medication finally taking him under. I looked at his sleeping face lit by the dashboard lights. He looked so much like his mother did at that age. Innocent. Vulnerable. I thought about Rachel. I thought about the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders. I thought about the woman who screamed at me in the police station just hours ago defending a monster. I realized then that I had been fighting the wrong battle. I had been trying to keep the peace. I had been trying to respect their marriage, hoping Derek would settle down, hoping Rachel would come to her senses. I had been playing defense. But you don't win a war on defense. Not against a man like Derek Lawson. Derek thought he was untouchable. He thought he had the badge, the law, and the family on his side. He thought I was just a tired old man with a limited pension and a broken heart. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles popped. He was right about one thing. I was tired. I was tired of the lies. I was tired of the fear in my grandson's eyes. But he was wrong about the rest. I wasn't broke, and I wasn't broken. I pulled into the driveway of my cabin. The dark windows stared back at me. This wasn't just a home anymore. It was a fortress. And inside that fortress, I had the resources to burn Derek's world to the ground. I carried Lucas inside and tucked him into the guest bed. I sat there for a moment, listening to his breathing, making sure it was steady. Then I went to my office. I didn't turn on the overhead light. I just switched on the desk lamp. I opened the safe again. I pulled out the ledger. $12 million. Accumulated through 40 years of shrewd investments, quiet living, and the sale of family land that no one knew I owned. I looked at the phone number for Edward Mercer, my attorney. It was 4 a.m. I didn't care. I dialed. Edward picked up on the third ring. His voice was rough with sleep. "Jack, is everything all right?" "No, Ed," I said. "Nothing is all right." I told him everything. I told him about the precinct. I told him about the phone book beating. I told him about the kidney damage. I want to destroy him, Ed. I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I don't want to just win custody. I want to strip him of his badge. I want to strip him of his pension. I want him to rot in a cell, and I want him to know it was me who put him there. There was a pause on the line. I could hear Edward shifting, sitting up. The lawyer in him was waking up. Jack, if we go down this road, it is going to get ugly. He will come after you. He will use every dirty trick he learned on the force. He will use Rachel against you. Let him try, I said. I want you to hire a forensic accountant, Ed. I want to know where every dime of Rachel's trust fund went. And I want you to find out who Derek owes money to. Cops who beat kids usually have other vices. Lucas said he is gambling. Find the bookie. Find the debt. I am on it, Jack, Edward said. But be careful. A cornered animal bites. I hung up. I sat there in the pool of yellow light staring at the wall. Derek Lawson had made a fatal mistake. He thought violence was power. He thought fear was control. He didn't know that he had just handed me the weapon I needed. He had beaten my grandson, and in doing so, he had signed his own death warrant. Not a physical death. That would be too easy. I was going to dismantle his life piece by piece, brick by brick, until he was left with nothing but the shame of what he had done. I walked to the window and looked out at the snowy drive. Let them come, I whispered to the darkness. Let them come. Lucas sat at my kitchen table pushing a piece of toast around his plate. The morning sun was trying to break through the gray clouds outside, but inside the cabin the air felt heavy. He looked small in my oversized flannel shirt, his shoulders hunched as if he were waiting for a blow that could come from any direction. I poured him a glass of orange juice and set it down. The clink of the glass against the wood made him jump. Grandpa, he said, his voice barely a whisper. We can't win this. I sat down opposite him. Why do you say that, son? Because of who he is, Lucas said, looking up at me with eyes that had seen too much. He is a sergeant. He knows the judges. He knows the other cops. He plays golf with the district attorney. Mom says, he hesitated, biting his lip. What does your mother say, Lucas? Tell me. She says you are just a bitter old man living in a shack. She says you squandered everything Grandma left. She told me that if I came to you, I would starve because you can barely feed yourself. She said Derek is the only reason we have a roof over our heads. She says you are powerless, Grandpa, that you are nothing. I felt a cold fire ignite in my chest. It wasn't anger at the boy. It was a profound sadness for my daughter. Rachel had bought into the lie so completely that she had become its primary enforcer. She measured a man's worth by the shine of his car and the size of his house. She didn't understand that a house built on debt is just a prison with nice curtains. I stood up and cleared the plates. Lucas watched me, his anxiety radiating off him in waves. Do you believe her? I asked. I don't know, Lucas admitted. I know you are good, Grandpa. But good doesn't beat powerful, does it? In the movies, the rich guy always wins. And Derek, he has so much money. He buys Mom whatever she wants. He has a new truck. He has the boat. I chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. He has payments, Lucas. He has a lease on the truck, a loan on the boat, and a mortgage on the house that is probably underwater. He doesn't own things. Things own him. I walked over to the pantry door. Come with me. Where are we going? Downstairs. I opened the pantry door, revealing a narrow set of wooden steps leading into the basement. It wasn't a finished basement with carpets and a pool table. It was a workspace. It smelled of sawdust oil and cold earth. It was where I fixed things, where I kept my tools, where I kept my life. Lucas followed me down his steps, tentative. I pulled the string for the single overhead bulb. The light swung, casting long shadows across the workbench cluttered with parts. In the corner sat an old, heavy gun safe. It was scratched, and the paint was peeling on the side. It looked like something I had picked up at a scrapyard. "Mom says you keep old newspapers in there," Lucas said, pointing to the safe. "She says you are a hoarder." I walked over to the safe. It was a relic, a Mosler model from the 50s, heavy enough to sink a ship. I spun the dial. Left, right, left. The tumblers clicked with a precision that belied the safe's rugged exterior. I grasped the heavy iron handle and cranked it. The bolts retracted with a heavy thud. I swung the door open. There were no newspapers. There were no stacks of gold bars or bundles of cash like you see in the movies. There were just rows of metal file boxes organized and labeled. I pulled out the first box and set it on the workbench. I opened it and took out a sheaf of papers. "Do you know what this is?" I asked, handing him a document. Lucas squinted at the paper. "It says Deed of Trust. For the shopping center on 4th Street. I own the land under that shopping center," I said. "I bought it in 1982 when it was just a cornfield. I lease it to the developers. Every month they pay me rent." I pulled out another file. "And this. Stocks." Lucas read. "Blue chip, tech, energy." "I bought these when everyone else was selling," I said. I didn't panic. I held them. I kept pulling out files. Municipal bonds, treasury notes, ownership stakes in 3 local manufacturing plants, the paperwork for this cabin, and the 400 acres of timberland that surrounded it all, paid for in cash 30 years ago. Lucas looked from the papers to me, his mouth slightly open. "I don't understand," he said. "If you have all this, why do you drive that old truck? Why do you wear that coat? Why do you live here?" I leaned against the workbench, crossing my arms. "Because wealth is quiet, Lucas. Rich is loud, poor is loud. Wealth whispers. I live this way because I like it. I like simple things. I like knowing that if the world ends tomorrow, I can chop my own wood and grow my own food. But there is another reason." I looked him in the eye. "I live this way to filter people out." Filter people. When you look like you have nothing, the people who stay by your side are the ones who really care about you. They are the ones who love Jack Sullivan, the man, not Jack Sullivan, the checkbook. I took a breath, the pain of the truth hitting me again. Your mother. She failed that test. When she turned 18, I told her I would pay for college, but she had to work for her spending money. She called me cheap. She met Derek and saw the flash, the badge, the leased cars, and she thought that was what success looked like. She chose the appearance of wealth over the reality of character. She looked at me and saw a failure because I didn't wear a Rolex. I gestured to the open safe. "This is $12 million in assets, Lucas. Liquid and fixed. I have 0 debt. I answer to no one. I could buy Derek's precinct and turn it into a parking lot if I wanted to." Lucas stared at the safe as if it were a portal to another dimension. 12 million. "I am telling you this for 2 reasons," I said, closing the file box. "First, I need you to stop being afraid that we can't afford a lawyer. We can afford an army of lawyers. We can afford the kind of lawyers who eat judges for breakfast." And the second reason. I put my hand on his shoulder. "Because you are the only one left who passed the test. You came to me when you were hurt. You didn't ask for money. You asked for safety. You trusted the old man in the cabin when everyone else told you he was worthless." Lucas looked down, tears welling in his eyes again. "I just wanted you, Grandpa." "I know, son, and that is why I am going to fight for you with everything I have." I closed the safe door and spun the dial, locking it tight. "We are going back upstairs," I said. "I have a phone call to make." We went back up to the kitchen. The atmosphere had changed. Lucas sat straighter. The fear was still there, but the hopelessness was gone. He realized he wasn't hiding behind a fragile old man. He was standing behind a fortress. I picked up my phone and dialed Edward Mercer's private line. It was Sunday morning, but Ed would be awake. Ed was always awake. He answered on the first ring. "Jack, I got your message about the forensic accountant. I have a team ready to start Monday." "No, Ed," I said, my voice hard. "We aren't waiting for Monday. And we aren't just looking at Derek." "What do you mean?" "I want to initiate Operation Undermine." There was a silence on the line. Ed knew what that meant. We had discussed it years ago as a nuclear option if Rachel ever got into serious trouble. "Are you sure, Jack?" Ed asked, his voice dropping an octave. "Once we pull that thread, the whole sweater unravels. If we audit the trust, we are going to find things. Things that might put your daughter in legal jeopardy if she was complicit." "She forged my signature, Ed," I said, looking at Lucas. "Or she let him do it. Either way, she crossed the line. They tried to steal from me while I was still alive. They tried to gaslight me into a grave. I want a full forensic audit of the Rachel Sullivan Trust. I want to know where every single cent went for the last 10 years. I want to know who signed the checks. I want to know which casinos cashed them." I paused, letting the anger fuel my focus. "And Ed, I want you to freeze the assets, all of them. The house they live in, the accounts, the cars. If my name is on any of the original paperwork for that house mortgage, which I know it is because I co-signed 20 years ago, I want you to call the note due. You are going to make them homeless, Jack." "No," I said. "They made themselves homeless when they decided to bite the hand that was feeding them. I am just closing the restaurant. Do it, Ed. Torch it." I hung up the phone. I felt a grim satisfaction. Derek Lawson thought he was playing a game of checkers with a senile old man. He didn't know he had just sat down at a chessboard with the grandmaster who owned the board, the pieces, and the building the game was being played in. I looked at Lucas. "Go pack a bag, son. We might be here a while." "But what if they come back?" Lucas asked, looking at the door. "Let them come," I said, pouring myself another cup of coffee. "I want them to come, because when they do, they are going to find out that the old man's pockets are deep and his memory is long. And I have a few receipts I have been dying to show them. Information is ammunition, and in a war against a crooked cop, you need enough ammo to level a city block." I left Lucas sleeping soundly, his ribs wrapped and his belly full, and drove my truck into the city. It was a Sunday, but the people I needed to see did not observe the Sabbath. They observed the flow of data and the whisper of secrets. I pulled into the alley behind a nondescript electronics repair shop in the industrial district. The sign out front said closed, but the back door was unlocked. I stepped inside, the air thick with the smell of soldering iron and ozone. A man was hunched over a workbench surrounded by monitors. Mickey. He used to be intelligence for the state police before he realized he had a conscience, and the department didn't. He was the best white hat hacker I knew, and he owed me his freedom. "Jack," he said without turning around. "You look like hell. I feel like it, Mickey. Did you find what I asked for?" Mickey spun his chair around. His face was grim, illuminated by the blue light of the screens. He didn't offer me coffee. He knew I wasn't here for pleasantries. "I dug deep, Jack. I went through the back doors of the offshore servers. I cracked the encrypted logs of the casinos. You are not going to like this. Show me." He pulled up a spreadsheet on the main monitor. It was a list of transactions. Dates, times, amounts. The numbers were staggering. "Your son-in-law has a problem," Mickey said. "A big one. He is playing on a site hosted in Malta. Unregulated. High-stakes poker and sports betting. Look at this column." I leaned in. The losses were in red. 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 on a single Sunday night football game. "Total debt?" I asked. $212,000, Mickey said. And that is just the principle. These guys charge shark rates. With Vigorish, he is looking at $250,000 easy, and he is past due, Jack. They cut him off 3 days ago. That is why he is desperate. The collectors for these sites don't send letters. They send guys with baseball bats. That explained the urgency. That explained why he beat Lucas for finding his phone. He was terrified the boy would see the threatening texts. It explained the rush to liquidate the trust. Speaking of the trust, Mickey said, clicking a new tab. This is the audit of the account your wife set up for Rachel. I braced myself. I knew it was bad, but I wasn't prepared for the reality. The screen showed a graph that looked like a cliff dive. 10 years ago, the account held $300,000. Today, the balance was $492.16. Where did it go? I whispered. Everywhere, Mickey said. He didn't take it all at once. He bled it dry. Over 5 years, he made transfers to a shell company called DL Consulting. It sounds legitimate, right? But look at the expenditures of the shell company. He pulled up another window. Lease payments on a Porsche, payments to a luxury watch dealer, and this. He pointed to a recurring monthly payment of $3,000. It was labeled A Rent, Unit 4B. They own their house, I said. Why is he paying rent? He isn't paying for his house, Mickey said. He is paying for an apartment in the North End, the trendy district. I stared at the screen. The North End was 40 minutes from where Rachel and Derek lived. It was expensive, flashy. Who lives there, Mickey? Mickey hesitated. He looked at me with genuine pity. I pulled the security feeds from the building lobby, Jack. He tapped a key. A grainy video played. It showed Derek walking into a glass-walled lobby. He wasn't wearing his uniform. He was wearing a suit I had never seen. He walked to the elevator, and a woman met him. She was young, maybe 25, blonde, beautiful in a way that costs a lot of money to maintain. She threw her arms around his neck and kissed him. Derek smiled a smile I hadn't seen him give my daughter in years. He put his hand on her stomach. She was visibly pregnant. I felt the room spin. A mistress. A second life. A baby on the way. He is starting over, I realized aloud. He isn't trying to save his marriage with Rachel. He is trying to cash out. He wants the trust fund and my assets so he can pay off his debts and run away with her. He is playing a dangerous game, Jack, Mickey said. He is robbing Peter to pay Paul, but Paul is a mobster and Peter is his wife. This girl, Tina, she thinks he is a wealthy real estate developer. I checked her social media. She is posting photos of baby clothes and talking about their future in the Cayman Islands. He is planning to leave the country, I said. Looks like it. Mickey agreed. But he needs the cash first. He needs your money, Jack. Without it, he is a dead man walking. The bookies will kill him if he tries to run without paying. I stood up, the cold fury settling in my gut, like lead. Print it, I said. All of it. Every bet, every transfer, every frame of that video. Mickey handed me a thick manila envelope. It was heavy. It felt like holding a bomb. Jack, one more thing, Mickey said as I turned to leave. Be careful. I am seeing chatter on the local forums. Derek isn't just hiding. He is attacking. What do you mean? Check Facebook. I didn't have Facebook. I barely used email. But Mickey pulled it up on his screen. There on the community page for our town was a post from Sergeant Derek Lawson. It had been up for 3 hours. It already had 400 likes and hundreds of comments. It was a photo of Derek looking sad and bruised, the ice pack on his nose. Next to it was a photo of me taken years ago, where I looked particularly disheveled. Friends and neighbors, the post read. It breaks my heart to share this family tragedy. My father-in-law, Jack Sullivan, is suffering from a rapid cognitive decline. His dementia has made him paranoid and violent. Last night, in a fit of confusion, he assaulted me and kidnapped my stepson Lucas. He has convinced the poor boy that we are the enemy. We are terrified for Lucas's safety. Jack has guns in that cabin and he is not in his right mind. Please, if you see them, do not approach. Call the sheriff immediately. We just want our boy home safe. Please pray for us. I read the comments. Oh my God, Derek, I am so sorry. Derek, I always knew that old man was crazy. He lives like a hermit. I bet he is dangerous. Sending prayers. Stay strong, Sergeant. He was gaslighting the entire town. He was painting me as a senile monster and himself as the suffering hero. He was preparing the battlefield. If something happened to me now, if the police stormed my house and shot me, everyone would say it was a tragedy, but necessary. They would say the crazy old man finally snapped. He is good, I said quietly. He is desperate, Mickey corrected, and that makes him sloppy. He posted this from his phone. The geotag shows he wasn't at the station or at home when he wrote it. Where was he? He was at the apartment in the North End, with Tina. I took the envelope. Thank you, Mickey. Wipe your logs. I drove back to the cabin, my mind racing. The landscape had changed. I wasn't just fighting a custody battle anymore. I was fighting a public relations war against a man who owned the narrative. My phone started buzzing in my pocket. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. I pulled over and looked at the screen. It was Mrs. Higgins, the nice lady who ran the bakery. Jack, please bring Lucas back. We are all worried about you. It is no shame to get help for your memory. Then a text from my old deputy. Jack, I saw the post. Don't do anything stupid. Let the boy go. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat. He had turned them all. 40 years of living in this community and one Facebook post had erased it all. That is the power of the badge and a good lie. I pulled into my long driveway. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the snow. I saw tire tracks near my gate that weren't mine. Someone had been here, watching. I walked into the cabin. Lucas was sitting on the floor building a house of cards. He looked up, his eyes fearful. Did you see it, Grandpa? He asked. See what? The internet. My friends are texting me. They say you kidnapped me. They say you are crazy. I knelt down beside him. Lucas, look at me. Do I look crazy to you? No. Do I look like I forgot who I am? No. Then it doesn't matter what they say. The truth is in this envelope. I placed the heavy packet on the table. This is his coffin, Lucas. Everything is in here. The gambling, the theft, the other woman. Lucas's eyes went wide. Other woman, he has a secret life son. He has a baby on the way with another woman. He isn't trying to get you back because he loves you. He is trying to get you back because he needs control of the money to run away with her. Lucas looked at the envelope as if it were radioactive. He is leaving Mom. He is planning to. He has drained her accounts. He has stolen her future. Tears welled up in the boy's eyes. She defended him, Grandpa. She screamed at me for him, and he is stealing from her. She doesn't know Lucas. She is a victim too. A blind victim, but a victim. Suddenly the house phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. Jack, this is Sheriff Miller. The voice boomed through the quiet room. We have a court order for an emergency welfare check based on credible reports of mental instability. We are coming out. Open the gate or we will breach it. I looked at the clock. It was 6 p.m. Darkness had fallen. They weren't coming to talk. They were coming to take Lucas. And if they took him, Derek would make sure he never spoke again. And me. I would be taken to a psych ward heavily sedated, and by the time I woke up, Derek would be in the Caymans. I grabbed the envelope and shoved it into my safe. Get your shoes, Lucas. Are we running? He asked. No, I said, moving to the gun cabinet. We are digging in. I grabbed a heavy chain and padlock from the mudroom. I went out to the front gate and locked it. It wouldn't stop them for long, but it would buy us time. I went back inside and pulled the blinds. I turned on the exterior floodlights, illuminating the yard like a prison yard. Then I called Edward Mercer. Ed, they are coming. The sheriff. Jack, listen to me, Ed said, his voice urgent. I saw the post. It is a nightmare. I am filing an injunction, but the courts are closed. You have to hold them off. Do not let them take the boy. If he leaves your custody, we lose our leverage. I am not opening the door, Ed, but you need to get that PI to the north end. I need photos of Derek with the mistress. Tonight. I need physical proof to show Rachel. Why Rachel? Because she is the weak link, Ed. If I show this to the judge, he might deliberate. If I show this to the town, they might gossip. But if I show Rachel that her husband has a pregnant girlfriend paid for with her mother's money, she will turn. And when she turns, Derek's shield disappears. I hung up. I looked at the monitors. A cruiser was pulling up to the gate. Then another. And a third. Derek wasn't with them. He was too smart for that. He was letting his buddies do the dirty work while he played the grieving father at home. The sheriff got out. He had a bullhorn. Jack Sullivan, this is the sheriff. Come out with your hands up. I looked at Lucas. He was trembling. Go to the basement, son. Lock the door from the inside. Do not open it unless you hear my voice or Ed's voice. What are you going to do, Grandpa? I sat in my armchair facing the door. I put the digital recorder on the table. I didn't pick up a gun. I picked up a microphone connected to the PA system I had installed for emergencies. I flipped the switch. My voice boomed out over the yard louder than their bullhorn. Sheriff Miller, you are trespassing on private property. I am of sound mind and body. My attorney is filing a federal injunction against your department for harassment as we speak. If you breach that gate, you are violating my civil rights, and I will own your badge. I paused, watching the monitor. The deputies hesitated. They looked at the sheriff. They knew my reputation. They knew I didn't make idle threats. Turn around, Miller, I said, my voice cold as ice. Go ask Sergeant Lawson about the apartment in the North End. Ask him about the 200 grand he owes to the Albanian mob. Ask him before you ruin your career for a dirty cop. On the screen, I saw the sheriff stiffen. He lowered the bullhorn. He said something to his men. They looked confused. I had planted the seed of doubt. It wouldn't stop them forever. But it stopped them for tonight. They got back in their cars and backed away. They would be back with a warrant, but that would take hours, maybe a day. I slumped in my chair. We had survived the skirmish, but the war was just getting started, and I knew Derek's next move wouldn't be legal. He was desperate. He was exposed. He was going to come for me himself, and he wasn't going to bring handcuffs. He was going to bring fire. The siege began 20 minutes after the sheriff left. They didn't try to breach the gate again. They didn't need to. They knew that sleep deprivation was a weapon more effective than a battering ram. At 11 p.m., a cruiser parked just outside my property line facing the cabin. They turned on the takedown lights, those high-intensity white beams used to blind suspects during traffic stops. The light cut through the gaps in my blinds, painting stripes of brilliant white across the living room floor. Then came the noise. Every 30 minutes, like clockwork, they hit the siren. Just a chirp. Whoop, whoop. It wasn't enough to sustain a noise complaint, but it was enough to jar you out of a doze. It was a reminder. We are here. We are watching. You are trapped. Lucas was huddled on the floor of the hallway, away from the windows. He had his hands over his ears. Grandpa, make them stop, he whispered. I sat in my armchair watching the monitors. I wasn't angry. Anger clouds judgment. I was clinical. I was observing a masterclass in harassment, a tactic we used to call shaking the tree. You annoy the target until they make a mistake, until they come out screaming with a baseball bat, giving you the justification to put a bullet in them. I poured a cup of coffee and walked over to Lucas. Put these on, son. I handed him a pair of noise-canceling shooting earmuffs I used at the range. He slipped them on and his shoulders relaxed slightly. Go to sleep, Lucas. I have the watch. I went back to my desk. The computer screen hummed. The feed from the birdhouse camera was crystal clear. I could see the two deputies in the cruiser. They were laughing. One of them, a young guy named Kincaid, was eating a sandwich, dropping the wrapper out the window onto my grass. Littering. I made a note of the timestamp. 11:42 p.m. At 2 a.m. they escalated. A second car arrived. They got out and stood by the gate shining flashlights at the house. Mr. Sullivan, one of them, shouted through a megaphone. This is a welfare check. We received a report of a gas leak. Please come to the door. It was a lie. A clumsy, obvious lie. If there was a gas leak, they would have called the fire department. They were trying to bait me. They wanted me to open the door to argue so they could claim they smelled alcohol on my breath or saw a weapon. They wanted to create probable cause out of thin air. I didn't move. I took a sip of coffee and clicked the Save Clip button on my recording software. At 3:15 a.m., Kincaid unzipped his pants and urinated on my fence post. I zoomed in. The resolution on the 4K lens was unforgiving. I captured his face, his badge number, and the stream hitting my property. Indecent exposure. Official misconduct. It was gold. By dawn, they had rotated shifts. A new car was there, but the tactics were the same. They were isolating us. No delivery trucks could get in. No friends could drive up. We were under a soft blockade. They wanted me to feel alone. They wanted me to feel the weight of the state crushing down on my little wooden cabin. But isolation works both ways. While they were keeping the world out, they were locking themselves in with a man who had spent 30 years building cases against people smarter than them. I spent the morning editing. I didn't just dump raw footage. I curated it. I built a timeline. Exhibit A, 11:00 p.m. Use of excessive lighting to harass a private residence. Exhibit B, 2:00 a.m. False reporting of emergency services. Exhibit C, 3:15 a.m. Public urination by a uniformed officer. I synced the audio. The laughter of the deputies was crisp. Look at the old freak's house. Bet he's dead in there already. Their cruelty was casual, comfortable. It was the banter of men who believed they were untouchable because they wore the same uniform as the sheriff. I compiled the video file. It was 10 minutes of damning evidence. It wasn't just harassment. It was a misuse of public resources. While they were sitting in my driveway playing games, calls in the county were going unanswered. They were burning gas, overtime pay, and manpower to terrorize a grandfather and a child. I opened my secure email client. I didn't send it to the sheriff. That would be useless. You don't complain to the wolf that the pack is hunting you. I typed the subject line, how your tax dollars are being used to harass a senior citizen and a minor. I added the recipients. First, the Internal Affairs Division of the State Police. My old office. The current captain, a woman named Sarah Jenkins, was a hard-nosed proceduralist who hated local yokels giving the badge a bad name. She would see this and see a liability lawsuit waiting to happen. Second, I added the email addresses of the 3 biggest news stations in the state. Investigative reporters love a bully story, especially one with video. Third, I added the editor of the local town gazette. I hit send. The file uploaded. 100%. Sent. I leaned back in my chair and stretched. The siege was still happening outside, but the mortar round I had just fired was arching through the digital sky, silent and deadly. Lucas walked into the office, rubbing his eyes. He had taken off the earmuffs. Are they still there? He asked. Yes, I said, but not for long. Why did you call someone? I called everyone Lucas. I went to the kitchen and started making breakfast. Bacon, eggs, toast. The smell filled the cabin, chasing away the stale scent of anxiety. I wanted Lucas to feel normal. I wanted him to see that his grandfather wasn't cowering in the dark. At 9:00 a.m., my phone began to ring. It was a blocked number. I didn't answer. Then it rang again, and again. Then the landline rang. I picked it up and put it on speaker. Mr. Sullivan, this is heavy breathing. This is Karen from Channel 5 News. We received an anonymous tip and a video file. Are you the Jack Sullivan in the video? I pitched my voice to sound frail, terrified. Yes, that's my house. They've been there all night. My grandson is terrified. We don't know why they are doing this. We are afraid to come out. Mr. Sullivan, we are sending a van. We are on our way. Do not come out until we get there. I hung up and smiled at Lucas. Showtime, son. 20 minutes later, the dynamic outside changed. I watched on the monitor as a news van with a satellite dish pulled up to the gate right behind the patrol car. A reporter jumped out with a cameraman. They pointed their lens not at my house, but at the deputies. The deputies panicked. I saw Kincaid holding his hand up to block the camera, shouting. He was used to being the one holding the power. Suddenly, he was the subject. He got back in his cruiser and rolled up the window. Then a black sedan pulled up. State plates. 2 men in suits got out. Internal affairs. They tapped on the cruiser window. Kincaid opened the door looking like he was about to vomit. I watched them talk. The IA agents pointed at my house, then at the puddle where Kincaid had relieved himself. Kincaid's head dropped. The cruiser reversed, executed a 3-point turn, and sped away. The news crew filmed them fleeing. The siege was broken, not by force, but by sunlight. I unlocked the front door and stepped out onto the porch, holding Lucas's hand. The news crew rushed the gate. Mr. Sullivan. Can you tell us what happened? And I walked to the gate and unlocked it. I looked into the camera lens. I didn't look frail anymore. I looked angry. My name is Jack Sullivan, I said, my voice carrying in the cold morning air. I served this state for 30 years, and last night men wearing the uniform I used to respect terrorized my home because I dared to protect my grandson from an abuser who hides behind a badge. The reporter thrust the microphone closer. Who is the abuser, Mr. Sullivan? I looked straight down the lens, knowing that somewhere in a house bought with stolen money, Derek Lawson was watching. His name is Sergeant Derek Lawson, I said, and he picked the wrong family to hurt. I didn't answer any more questions. I took Lucas back inside and locked the door. The news crew stayed filming the house, filming the tire tracks, filming the evidence. They were my security detail now. No cop would dare touch us while the cameras were rolling. But I knew this was a temporary victory. I had embarrassed them. I had shamed the department. Derek wouldn't be able to use his friends anymore. He was radioactive. The sheriff would distance himself to save his own career. Derek was alone now, just like he tried to make me. And a man like Derek, stripped of his power, stripped of his allies, and cornered by debt, would not surrender. He would snap. I went to the basement and checked the inventory in the safe. The next phase was coming. Derek would try to get to Rachel. He would try to use her as a shield or a weapon. I needed to get to her first. I needed to break the spell he had cast over her. I pulled out the file on the North End apartment, the photos of the mistress, the pregnant belly. Lucas, I called out. Yeah, Grandpa, get your coat. We are going to pay your mother a visit. And we aren't going to knock. But Derek is busy trying to explain to his boss why he is trending on Twitter, I said. He won't be home. We got back in the truck. The road was clear. The blockade was gone. I drove toward the suburbs, toward the house that debt built. I had the truth in a manila envelope on the seat beside me. It was time to deliver it. Not to the police, not to the press, but to the one person who had the power to destroy Derek from the inside out. His wife. The courthouse steps were slick with melting snow as Edward Mercer and I walked up them at 9 in the morning. I carried a leather briefcase that felt heavier than it looked, not because of the weight of the paper inside, but because of the weight of the secret I was about to reveal. For 40 years, I had guarded my financial privacy like a state secret. I lived in denim and flannel driving trucks until the wheels fell off, letting the town whisper that Jack Sullivan was just another pensioner scraping by. It was a shield that kept the leeches away. But today I was dropping that shield. I was turning myself into the biggest target in the county because it was the only way to save my grandson. We reached the clerk's office. The fluorescent lights hummed with a headache-inducing buzz. I pulled the thick document from my bag. It was a petition for full legal custody of Lucas Sullivan. Attached to it as Exhibit A was a sworn financial affidavit. Edward looked at me one last time before we handed it over. Jack, once this is filed, it becomes public record in the context of the hearing. Derek's lawyer will see it within the hour. There is no putting the toothpaste back in the tube. File it. Ed, I said, my voice flat. The clerk stamped the papers. Thud. Thud. The sound was final. I looked at the number on the bottom line of the affidavit. $12,450,000. It was a number that could buy freedom, but it was also a number that could buy a lot of trouble. We walked back out into the cold air. Now we wait, I said. Wait for what? Edward asked, lighting a cigarette. To see if a starving dog prefers the bone or the steak. We didn't have to wait long. We went back to my cabin where Lucas was nervously pacing the living room. He had seen the news report from the morning, but he was still terrified that the police would return. They won't come back today, son, I told him. Not after the media circus. They are regrouping. At noon, Edward's phone rang. He put it on speaker. It was the court-appointed mediator, Mr. Mercer. We have received your filing. I have forwarded the financials to the Respondents' Council. They are requesting a recess on the emergency hearing. Edward looked at me and raised an eyebrow. A recess. Usually in custody battles, the opposing side fights tooth and nail for an immediate return of the child. Yes, as the mediator continued. Mr. Lawson's attorney says that in light of this new information regarding Mr. Sullivan's resources, they want to explore an amicable resolution. They suggest a family conference. I smiled a cold, humorless smile. The bait had been taken. Derek Lawson, the man who was drowning in $200,000 of gambling debt, the man who was leasing a luxury apartment for a mistress he couldn't afford, had just seen the lifeboat. He had looked at that affidavit and realized that fighting for Lucas was small potatoes. Why fight over a teenage boy who eats your food and takes up space when you could fight for control of the $12 million fortune of a senile old man? Tell them we are open to talking, I said to Edward. But on my terms. We hung up. He took the bait. Lucas, I said, he doesn't want you anymore. He wants the money. Lucas looked confused. But how does that help us? Because a greedy man makes mistakes, son. An angry man is dangerous, but a greedy man is predictable. He is going to stop trying to hurt us and start trying to charm us. Or worse, he is going to try to control us. 2 hours later, my cell phone rang. It was Rachel. I stared at the screen. A picture of her from 5 years ago, smiling at a beach picnic, flashed at me. It felt like looking at a ghost. I answered, Dad. Her voice was small, trembling. It sounded like the little girl who used to wake up from nightmares and call for me. I am here, Rachel. Dad. I don't know what to say. Derek showed me the papers, the court papers. I remained silent. I needed to hear the script. I needed to hear exactly what he had told her to say. Dad. You have millions, she whispered the word like it was a curse. Why didn't you tell us? We have been struggling so hard. Derek works double shifts. I clip coupons. And you were sitting on a fortune. I didn't hoard it. Rachel, I said, keeping my voice steady. I saved it. For the family. For the future. There was a pause. I could hear breathing on the other end. Shallow, rapid breathing. Then the tone changed. It shifted from accusation to sorrow. Dad, I am so sorry about yesterday. At the police station. I was so scared. Derek was hurt, and Lucas was screaming, and I didn't know what to do. I haven't been sleeping well. I closed my eyes. I knew this wasn't her. This was survival. It is okay, Rachel. No, it isn't. I treated you terribly. And I miss you, Dad. I really miss you. Things aren't good. My grip on the phone tightened. This was the pivot. What do you mean things aren't good? She lowered her voice to a whisper. Derek. He has a temper, Dad. You were right. He scares me sometimes. I think I want to leave him. My heart hammered against my ribs. Part of me, the father part, wanted to jump in the truck and drive through the front door of her house to rescue her. But the detective part, the cold, analytical part, that had survived 30 years on the force, knew better. This was too fast. Yesterday she was screaming that I was a monster. Today she wants to leave her husband. Just hours after he found out I was a multi-millionaire, Derek was listening. I was sure of it. He was probably sitting right next to her, holding her hand, or holding something else, prompting her. This was the play. Get the old man to trust you. Get him to let his guard down. Get him to sign over control or assets to help his poor, struggling daughter escape her bad marriage. Rachel, I said, slowly testing the waters, if you want to leave him, you can come here. Right now. The gate is open for you. I can't just leave, she sobbed. He controls everything, Dad. The accounts, the car. If I leave, he will find me. He will hurt me. I need a plan. I need resources. There it was. Resources. What do you need, Rachel? We need to talk, she said. In person. Not here. Somewhere safe. Can we meet? Just you and me, please, Dad. I need my father. It was a trap, a bright neon trap with flashing lights. Derek wanted me out in the open, or he wanted me isolated with Rachel where he could exert pressure. Where do you want to meet? There is that old diner on Route 9, she said. The Starlight. Tonight at 8, please, Dad, don't tell anyone. If Derek finds out I am meeting you, he will kill me. I looked at the clock. It was 4 p.m. Okay, Rachel. 8 o'clock. The Starlight. Come alone. I promise. She hung up. I put the phone down on the kitchen table. Lucas was watching me, his eyes wide with fear. She is lying, isn't she, Grandpa? Yes, son, I said. She is lying. Then why are you going? Because she isn't lying about one thing, I said, standing up and walking to the window. She is scared. He is forcing her to do this. He is using her as bait to lure me out. So don't go, Lucas pleaded. It is a trap. I know it is a trap, Lucas, but a trap only works if the animal doesn't know it is there. If you know the trap is there, you can use it to catch the hunter. I turned to him. Derek thinks he is smart. He thinks he sees Altai's a lonely old man desperate to reconnect with his daughter. He thinks I will bring a checkbook and a hug. What will you bring? I walked to the closet and pulled out my old Kevlar vest. It was heavy, stiff with age, but still functional. I put it on under my flannel shirt. It was bulky, but my coat would hide it. I am going to bring an end to this, Lucas. I called Edward Mercer. Ed, the meeting is set. Route 9 Diner. 8 p.m. Do not go alone, Jack Ed warned. I am not going alone. I want you to call your contact at the FBI field office, the one who owes you for the RICO case last year. Tell him we have a situation involving a corrupt officer, interstate wire fraud, and potential kidnapping. Tell him I am going to wear a wire. Jack, that is high risk. If he searches you, he won't search me, Ed. He is arrogant. He thinks he owns me. And besides, I am not going to wear a standard wire. I hung up and went to my electronics drawer. I pulled out a small black device no bigger than a button. It was a live-streaming GPS tracker with audio. I sewed it into the lining of my coat collar. Then I went to the safe. I took out the envelope with the evidence. The photos of the mistress, the gambling debts, the stolen trust fund records. I wasn't going to the diner to negotiate. I was going to give Rachel the one thing Derek couldn't control: the truth. I was going to show her exactly who she was married to, and I was going to do it while Derek watched from the shadows, because I knew he wouldn't be far away. He would be in the parking lot or in a booth nearby, making sure she stuck to the script. I looked at Lucas. Lock the doors when I leave. Monitor the cameras. If the feed cuts out, you call Ed immediately. You are coming back, right? Grandpa, I put my hand on his head. I promise, son. I am just going to get your mother back. I walked out to the truck, the cold night air biting at my face. The Starlight Diner was 10 miles away. 10 miles to drive into the jaws of a wolf who thought he had finally cornered his prey. But Derek had forgotten the most important rule of the street. Never corner a man who has nothing left to lose but his family. I started the engine. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the snowy road ahead. I touched the envelope on the passenger seat. It was time to feed the wolf, but this meal was going to choke him. I stepped into the darkness. I am here, Derek, I called out, my voice echoing in the vast, empty space. Let her go. A floodlight snapped on, blinding me. I raised my hand to shield my eyes. Step forward. Jack Derek's voice boomed from the shadows. Hands where I can see them. I walked into the light. And the play began. The rain hammered against the metal roof of the warehouse, creating a deafening industrial rhythm that isolated us from the rest of the world. I let my shoulders drop and allowed a wheezing cough to rattle my chest. I needed to look smaller. I needed to look like a man whose time had run out. I leaned heavily on the folding table, my hand trembling as I reached for the water bottle Derek had left there. You look pathetic, Jack. Derek sneered, his gun still trained on my forehead. The great Captain Sullivan, the terror of the precinct. Look at you now, just a scared old man trying to buy another 5 minutes of life. I took a sip of water, letting it spill down my chin slightly. I wiped it away with a shaking hand. I needed him to talk. The camera on my chest was recording, but a visual wasn't enough. I needed the audio. I needed a confession so vile and so complete that no lawyer could ever spin it. I needed him to hang himself with his own arrogance. Why, Derek? I wheezed, my voice thin and raspy. I understand the money. Everyone wants money. But why the boy? Why Lucas? He is a child. He looked up to you. Derek laughed. It was a cold, hollow sound that bounced off the steel walls. He stepped closer, invading my personal space, smelling of sweat and expensive cologne. He didn't look up to me, Jack. He looked at me like I was an intruder. From the day I moved in, that kid was a constant reminder of Rachel's baggage. He is weak, soft. He sits in his room reading books and playing games. He doesn't have a killer instinct. And that justifies beating him with a phone book, I asked quietly. That justifies crushing his kidney. It wasn't just about discipline, Derek said, his eyes lighting up with a twisted sort of pride. It was stress relief, Jack. You know the job. You know the pressure. You come home after a shift of dealing with the scum of the earth, and you need to hit something. And there he was, always watching me with those big, judging eyes. It felt good to put him in his place. It felt good to see the fear. It made me feel like the king of my own castle. I looked past him at Rachel. She was staring at him, her mouth taped shut, but her eyes wide with a horror that was absolute. She was hearing her husband admit that he tortured her son, not for correction, but for pleasure. And the oath I asked pressing him further. You swore to protect and serve. How did you go from a rookie with potential to a man who owes the Albanian mob 200 grand? Derek paced back and forth, the gun swinging casually at his side. He was enjoying this. He was enjoying his monologue. He thought he was writing the final chapter of his biography. The oath is a fairy tale for civilians, Jack. You know that. The system is rigged. I just decided to stop being a sucker. Why should I bust my hump for 80 grand a year while the dealers make millions? I just took my cut. What cut, I asked. He stopped pacing and looked at me, his expression almost pitying. The evidence locker, Jack. The drug busts in District 4. You remember the Martinez case last year? The missing kilo of cocaine. That wasn't a clerical error. That was my down payment on the Porsche. And the domestic disputes. You can make a lot of problems go away for the right price. I have taken cash from wife beaters to lose the paperwork. I have taken jewelry from crime scenes. I am a businessman, Jack. I just wear a badge to minimize the overhead. I glanced at Officers Griggs and Miller standing in the shadows. They shifted uncomfortably. Even for dirty cops, this was brazen. Derek was admitting to felonies that carried 20-year sentences. And Rachel, I asked, bringing the focus back to the woman tied to the chair. Did you ever love her? Or was she just a mark? Derek looked at his wife. He didn't look at her with love. He didn't even look at her with hate. He looked at her with the same indifference one might look at a broken toaster. Rachel, he sighed. Rachel is a project that failed. I picked her because she was malleable. She was desperate for a hero. She was easy to mold. I thought she came with a trust fund. I thought she was my ticket to the easy life. But she is exhausting, Jack. She is so needy, always asking where I have been, always crying about her feelings. He walked over to her and tilted her chin up with the barrel of his gun. She flinched, tears streaming down her bruised cheeks. I hated coming home to you, he whispered to her, his voice intimate and cruel. Every time you opened your mouth, I wanted to scream. That is why I got the apartment in the North End. That is why I found Tina. She doesn't ask questions. She just appreciates the lifestyle I provide. She is young. She is fun. You are just an anchor. He turned back to me, his face hardening. And that is why you have to die, Jack. Because you are the chain that holds the anchor. Once you are gone, I get the money, I pay off the debts, and I disappear. Rachel will grieve for a while, and then she will have a tragic accident. A mix of pills and wine, maybe. Grief is a killer. And then I am free. I let out a long, shuddering breath. It wasn't acting this time. The pure evil of his plan, the casual way he discussed murdering my daughter, was suffocating. You plan to kill her, I stated flatly. It wasn't a question. It was a clarification for the record. Only if necessary, Derek said, shrugging. But let's be honest, Jack. She isn't going to survive without you. She is weak. She can't function on her own. I am doing her a favor, really, putting her out of her misery. I straightened up. I stopped coughing. I looked at Rachel. She had stopped crying. The terror in her eyes had been replaced by something else, something vacant. It was the look of a person whose entire reality had shattered. The man she had defended against her own father, the man she had chosen over her own son, had just confessed that he viewed her as nothing more than a disposable obstacle. Rachel. I said, my voice cutting through the sound of the rain. Did you hear him? She looked at me. She nodded slowly. Did you hear him say he beats Lucas for fun? I asked. Did you hear him say he steals from the evidence locker? Did you hear him say he plans to kill you? Derek laughed. She hears you, Jack. But she doesn't believe you. She is programmed. She knows who provides for her. I ignored him. I kept my eyes locked on my daughter. This is your hero, Rachel. This is the man you sacrificed your son for. This is the man you screamed at me to protect. Look at him. Really look at him. Rachel turned her head. She looked at Derek. For the first time in 10 years, she didn't see the uniform. She didn't see the husband. She saw the monster. She started to scream. It was a muffled sound behind the duct tape, but it was primal. It was a scream of pure agony of a heart ripping in half. She thrashed in the chair, the metal legs scraping against the concrete floor. She threw her head back and wailed a sound of grief so profound it made the hairs on my arms stand up. Derek looked annoyed. He stepped forward and raised his hand to strike her again. "Shut up, Rachel," he snapped. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." I took a step forward. "Don't touch her," I said. My voice wasn't wheezing anymore. It was the voice of command. Derek spun around, surprised by the change in my tone. He pointed the gun at my chest. "You are in no position to give orders, old man. Sign the papers." I looked at him. I looked at the gun. I looked at the arrogance that was about to be his downfall. I heard everything, Derek, I said. And so did they. Derek frowned. "Who is they?" I ripped open my shirt, revealing the small black device blinking on my chest. "The Federal Bureau of Investigation," I said. "You are live on a federal frequency, Sergeant. And you just confessed to racketeering, drug trafficking, assault, and conspiracy to commit murder." Derek stared at the light. His face went pale. His hand started to shake. "You are bluffing," he whispered. I smiled, and it was the smile of the wolf who had finally closed the trap. "Check your phone," I said. He didn't have time to check his phone. The skylights above us shattered. It was a beautiful, violent sound that signaled the end of Derek Lawson's reign of terror. But in the split second before the chaos fully erupted, Derek did not look at the roof. He looked at me. His eyes were wide, manic, and filled with the realization that he had been outplayed. Just seconds before the glass fell, he had jammed the barrel of his gun so hard against my forehead I could feel the metal biting into my skin. He had screamed at me, spit flying from his mouth, saying, "Time is up, old man. Sign the paper, or I paint the wall with your brains." He was trembling, vibrating with the desperate energy of a man who sees his escape route closing. I had looked him dead in the eye. I didn't flinch. I didn't beg. I just smiled a cold, hard smile that I had saved for this exact moment. I told him, "Derek, I forgot to tell you something. I am not alone." That was when I ripped the buttons of my flannel shirt open. The sound of the fabric tearing was sharp and distinct in the warehouse. I exposed the black Kevlar vest underneath, but more importantly, I exposed the small device clipped to the center of my chest. The green light was pulsing a steady heartbeat of digital justice. "Welcome to the FBI live stream." "Derek," I said, my voice calm and steady amidst the rising storm, "you are on the air." His gaze dropped to the device. For a heartbeat, he was frozen, paralyzed by the sheer impossibility of what he was seeing. His brain couldn't process it. He was the predator. I was the prey. The prey doesn't wear a wire. The prey doesn't bring the federal government to a warehouse execution. Then the world exploded. Flashbangs detonated with a blinding white light and a concussive thump that hit you in the chest like a sledgehammer. The sound was deafening, a high-pitched ring that drowned out Derek's scream. Smoke filled the air, instant and disorienting. Federal agents dropped the weapon. Get on the ground now. The voice was everywhere, amplified by loudspeakers booming from the rafters and the doors. It wasn't a request. It was the voice of God. Red laser sights cut through the smoke, dozens of them dancing across Derek's chest and face. He looked like a pincushion of light. He spun around, wild and erratic, waving his gun. Griggs and Miller, the two dirty cops Derek had brought as muscle, dropped their weapons instantly. They knew the game. They knew when you were beat. They hit the wet concrete, hands behind their heads, screaming, "Don't shoot, don't shoot." They were cowards who only felt tough when they had the badge to hide behind. Without it, they were nothing. But Derek broke. He didn't drop the gun. He grabbed Rachel. He yanked her chair backward, using her body as a human shield. He pressed his gun to her temple, his arm shaking violently. "Back off," he screamed, his voice cracking into a high falsetto of terror. "I will kill her. I swear to God, I will kill her." The SWAT team froze. They were professionals. They had the shot, but with Rachel in the line of fire, the risk was too high. A wall of black-clad operators with ballistic shields moved forward, forming a perimeter, but they held their fire. I stood 5 feet away from him. The lasers were still painted on him, but he was crouching behind my daughter, hanging her terrified, sobbing form to buy himself seconds of life. "Jack, tell them to back off," Derek yelled at me. "Get me a car. I want a chopper. I want out of here." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had beaten my grandson, who had stolen my daughter's future, who had planned to murder me and make it look like a suicide. I saw the sweat pouring down his face. I saw the madness in his eyes. He wasn't a sergeant anymore. He wasn't a husband. He was a rabid dog. "It is over, Derek," I said, stepping forward. "There is no chopper. There is no car. There is only a cell. Put the gun down and maybe you get to walk out of here alive." He pressed the gun harder against Rachel's head. She whimpered a sound of pure despair. "Stay back, old man, or I swear I will do it. I have nothing to lose." "You have one thing left to lose," I said, taking another step. "Your life." He shifted his aim. For a fraction of a second, the gun left Rachel's temple and pointed at me. He wanted to kill me. He hated me more than he loved his own survival. That was the mistake. I didn't wait. I didn't hesitate. I dropped to one knee. It was a move I had drilled 1,000 times in the academy 40 years ago. Muscle memory doesn't age, even if the joints do. My hand went to my ankle. My fingers closed around the grip of the Glock 19. Derek saw the movement. He tried to bring his aim back to me. He tried to pull the trigger. But he was fighting against a man who had been waiting for this shot since the moment he saw the bruises on his grandson's back. Pop, pop, 2 shots, controlled, rhythm. The first round hit him in the shoulder, spinning him around. The impact shattered his collarbone and forced his gun hand away from Rachel. He screamed a sound of shock and pain. The second round hit him in the leg, shattering his knee. He collapsed. He hit the floor, screaming, writhing in the dirty water and oil. His gun skittered away across the concrete. "Move, move, move!" The SWAT team surged forward like a black tide. They were on him in seconds. I saw boots on his neck, boots on his back. They zip-tied his hands behind him, wrenching his injured shoulder. He howled, but no one cared. "Secure the hostage." 2 agents rushed to Rachel. One cut the zip ties binding her wrists. Another ripped the tape from her mouth. She fell forward, sobbing, gasping for air. "Daddy," she wailed. "Daddy." I holstered my weapon. I stood up, ignoring the creaking in my knees. I walked over to her. I pushed the agents aside gently. "I am here, baby," I whispered, pulling her into my arms. "I am here." She buried her face in my flannel shirt, clinging to me like she was 5 years old again. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. She was covered in blood, some hers, some Derek's, but she was alive. I looked over her shoulder. They were hauling Derek up, He was limping, bleeding, crying. He looked at me. His eyes met mine. "You ruined everything," he spat, blood spraying from his mouth. "You ruined my life." I stared at him. I didn't feel anger anymore. I just felt a cold, hollow satisfaction. "I didn't ruin your life, Derek," I said, my voice cutting through the noise of the warehouse. "I just turned on the lights." An agent in a suit walked over to me. He was the lead investigator, the one Edward had contacted. He looked at Derek, then at me. "That was a hell of a shot, Mr. Sullivan," he said. "I practiced," I said. "Is the feed still running?" the agent asked, pointing to my chest. I looked down. The green light was still blinking. "Yes," I said. "Good," the agent smiled grimly. "That means we have his confession, his threats, and his assault on a federal officer on tape. He isn't seeing daylight again." I reached up and clicked the device off. The green light died. The show was over. I looked back at Rachel. She was looking at Derek as they dragged him away. There was no love in her eyes anymore. No defense. Just horror. She finally saw him. She finally saw the monster I had seen from the beginning. He was going to kill me," she whispered. "He was really going to do it." "Yes," I said, smoothing her hair. "He was." "Why, Daddy? Why did he hate us so much?" "Because he hated himself, Rachel, and he used us to pay for the price of being him." The paramedics arrived, swarming around us, checking Rachel's face, checking my vitals. I waved them off. I was fine. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me tired, bone-deep tired, but I was fine. We walked out of the warehouse into the rain. The flashing lights of the police cars and ambulances painted the night in chaotic strokes of red and blue. I saw Edward Mercer standing by his car, smoking a cigarette under an umbrella. He saw me and walked over. "You cut it close, Jack," he said, looking at the blood on my shirt. "I had to be sure, Ed. I had to be sure he wouldn't wiggle out of it." Edward looked at Rachel. "Is she okay?" "She will be," I said. "She has a long road, but she is free." "What about Lucas?" Edward asked. "He is safe," I said. "He is the only reason I am standing here." I looked up at the sky. The rain was washing away the grime of the city, washing away the lies of the last 10 years. "Take us home, Ed," I said. Edward drove us back to the safe house. Lucas was waiting. When he saw his mother bruised and broken, he didn't recoil. He ran to her. "Mom," he cried, hugging her. Rachel fell to her numb, hugging him back, burying her face in his neck. "I am so sorry, Lucas," she sobbed. "I am so, so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have protected you." I watched them holding each other. The family was broken, yes, shattered, but the pieces were still there. And we had the strongest glue in the world to put them back together. Truth. I sat down in a chair and closed my eyes. I could finally sleep. The wolf was in a cage. The sheep were safe. And the old shepherd had one more fight left in him. Because Derek wasn't the only one who had to pay. There were accomplices. There were enablers. And tomorrow I was going to find every single one of them. But for tonight, I just listened to the sound of my daughter and grandson crying together. It was a sad sound, but it was a real sound. And after years of silence and lies, it was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. The aftermath of a raid is never like the movies. There is no slow-motion walk away from an explosion. There is just noise, chaos, and the smell of ozone and fear. The warehouse moments ago, a theater of death, had transformed into a beehive of federal procedure. The SWAT team moved with mechanical efficiency, securing the perimeter, tagging evidence, and processing the prisoners. I stood near the open bay doors, the cold wind drying the sweat on my neck, watching them haul Derek Lawson away. He wasn't walking like a sergeant anymore. He was dragged, his feet scraping the concrete, his expensive suit ruined by oil and sludge. He was screaming, but it wasn't commands. It was a stream of incoherence blaming everyone but himself. He screamed at Griggs and Miller, calling them rats. He screamed at Rachel, calling her a traitor. He even screamed at me, promising that his friends on the force would fix this. But as they shoved him into the back of a federal transport van, I saw the truth in his eyes. He knew. He knew that no friend on the force could fix a federal indictment captured on live video. The feed from the device on my chest hadn't just gone to a server. It had been broadcast directly to the conference room of the United States Attorney and the head of the State Police Internal Affairs Division. Special Agent Reynolds, the man who had led the breach, walked over to me. He handed me a thermal blanket. "You did good, Jack. It played out exactly like you said it would." I took the blanket but didn't wrap it around myself. I looked at the van where Derek was thrashing against the cage. "Did you get the confession?" I asked. Reynolds nodded, lighting a cigarette and offering me one. I declined. "We got everything. The admission of the trust fund theft, the racketeering, the conspiracy to murder, and the assault on a federal witness. That last one carries 20 years by itself. We also picked up his mistress in the North End 20 minutes ago. She was packing a bag with $50,000 in cash. She started talking before we even read her rights." I felt a knot loosen in my chest. It was done. The legal web was airtight. Derek wasn't going to wiggle out on a technicality. He was going to die in prison. But the victory felt hollow as I turned my attention to the other side of the warehouse. Rachel was sitting on the bumper of an ambulance, a paramedic checking her pupils. She looked like a ghost. Her face was a map of bruises, purple and yellow, blooming under the harsh lights. But the physical damage was nothing compared to the hollowness in her eyes. I walked over to her. The paramedic stepped back, giving us space. Rachel looked up at me. For a long time, she didn't speak. She just stared as if trying to reconcile the father she had demonized for years with the man who had just walked into a kill box to save her. Then her legs gave out. She slid off the bumper and hit the wet asphalt. She didn't try to stand. She curled forward, burying her face in her hands, and let out a sound that I will hear in my nightmares until the day I die. It wasn't a cry for help. It was a cry of absolute crushing shame. I knelt down. The pavement was freezing, soaking through my jeans instantly. "Rachel, get up," I said softly. She shook her head violently. No, I can't. I can't look at you. I can't look at anyone." I reached out and touched her shoulder. She flinched, expecting a blow. That flinch broke my heart more than any bullet could have. "He was going to kill me," she gasped, the words tumbling out between sobs. He told me I was an anchor. He told me he hated me. I defended him, Dad. I chose him. I let him hurt Lucas." "Oh God, Lucas." She grabbed my hand, squeezing it with a desperate strength. "I let him hurt my baby. I told Lucas he was lying. I told the police he was on drugs. What kind of mother am I? I am a monster. I am just like him." "No," I said firmly, gripping her shoulders and forcing her to look at me. "You are not like him. He is a sociopath, Rachel. He spent 10 years isolating you, gaslighting you, making you believe that up was down and black was white. You didn't choose him over Lucas. You chose the version of reality he force-fed you." "But I signed the papers," she wailed. "I let him take the money. I let him take everything." "Money is paper, Rachel. It burns, it shreds, it doesn't matter. We have the money back. We have the house back. But right now I need you to breathe." She collapsed against my chest, weeping like a child. I held her, rocking her back and forth in the freezing rain. I looked over her head at Edward Mercer, who was standing by his car watching us. He looked grim. He knew that the legal battle was the easy part. Putting a human being back together after they have been dismantled by a narcissist is the work of a lifetime. Edward walked over his shoes, clicking on the pavement. The FBI wants a statement, Jack, he said quietly. But it can wait. Let's get her out of here. I helped Rachel stand. She was dead weight, her spirit completely shattered. We walked her to Edward's car. She wouldn't let go of my hand. As we settled her into the back seat, Agent Reynolds approached again. "Mr. Sullivan," he said, "I have to ask. You knew he was going to bring her here tonight, didn't you?" I looked at Reynolds. I owed him the truth. "I suspected it," I said. Reynolds shook his head. "No, you didn't suspect. You engineered it. You filed that custody petition with the financial affidavit, knowing exactly how Derek would react. You knew he was drowning in debt. You knew seeing $12 million would make him desperate. You pushed him into a corner because you knew the only way to get your daughter back was to let him show her his teeth." I looked at Rachel through the car window. She was staring at nothing wrapped in a blanket. 3 days ago, I said, my voice low. I sat in my cabin and I realized that I could win custody of Lucas easily. But if I did that, Rachel would stay with Derek. She would believe his lies. She would hate me forever, and eventually he would kill her for the insurance money or just out of spite. I realized that the only way to save her was to let her see him with the mask off. I had to be the bait, and she had to be the witness. Reynolds looked at me with a mixture of respect and horror. "You took a hell of a risk, Jack. If we had been 30 seconds late..." "I know," I said. But I knew Derek. He loves the sound of his own voice too much to pull the trigger right away. He needed to gloat. Reynolds tipped his hat. "Remind me never to play poker with you, Captain." I got into the car next to Rachel. Edward drove us away from the docks, away from the lights and the sirens. The heater blasted warm air, but Rachel was still shivering. "Dad," she whispered after a few miles. "Where are we going?" "We are going to get your son," I said. She stiffened. He won't want to see me. He hates me." "He doesn't hate you, Rachel. He is hurt. He is confused. But he is a Sullivan. He has a big heart." We arrived at the safe house. The paralegal unlocked the door. Lucas was sitting on the cot, awake. He stood up when we walked in. He saw his mother. He saw the bruises, the blood, the devastation on her face. Rachel stopped in the doorway. She looked at the floor, unable to meet his eyes. She fell to her knees again, her hands covering her face. "Lucas," she choked out. "I am so sorry." Lucas didn't hesitate. He didn't ask for an explanation. He didn't demand an apology. He saw his mother in pain, and the instinct to protect her, the instinct Derek had tried to beat out of him, kicked in. He ran to her. He threw his arms around her neck. "Mom," he cried. "Mom, you are safe." They held each other on the floor of that sterile office, two survivors of a war they didn't start, but had finally finished. I stood back, leaning against the doorframe, feeling the exhaustion finally hit me. My knees ached. My chest hurt where the vest had dug in. I felt every one of my 69 years. But as I watched them, I felt something else too. Relief. The cancer that had been eating my family, the rot that was Derek Lawson, had been cut out. The wound was deep, and it would leave a scar that would ache when it rained, but it would heal. Edward came up beside me and handed me a flask. "Drink this, Jack. You look like you are going to keel over." I took a pull. It was cheap whiskey and it burned perfectly. "What happens to her now?" Edward asked, gesturing to Rachel. "She can't go back to that house," I said. "It is a crime scene, and even if it wasn't, it is haunted. She needs a place to decompress, a place where nobody knows her name. She can stay at my guest cottage for a few days," Edward offered, "until the press dies down." "No," I said. "She needs to come home, to the cabin." She needs to chop wood. She needs to dig in the dirt. She needs to remember who she was before she met him. I walked over to them. Lucas, help your mother up. We are going home. Rachel looked at me, her eyes red and swollen. I don't have a home, Dad. The bank. Derek. He ruined everything. You have a home, Rachel, I said, pulling her to her feet. You have always had a home. I just kept the light off so you could find your own way back. We walked out to the truck. The storm had passed. The sky was clearing, revealing a moon that was bright and sharp. I drove them to the cabin. I made up the beds. I locked the doors not because I was afraid, but because the world outside didn't need to come in tonight. I sat in my armchair in the dark, listening to the silence of the house. It was a different kind of silence than before. It wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Reynolds. Lawson is in holding. He is crying for a deal. We told him the only deal he gets is life without parole. Sleep tight, Jack. I put the phone down. Tomorrow the lawyers would descend. Tomorrow the reporters would camp out at the gate. Tomorrow we would have to start the long, ugly process of forensic audits and testimony. But tonight my daughter was sleeping in her old room. My grandson was safe, and the wolf was in a cage. I closed my eyes. For the first time in 10 years, I didn't check the perimeter cameras. I didn't need to. The family was whole, and that was the only security system that mattered. 8 months is a long time in a cell, but it is a blink of an eye in a lifetime. I stood in the back of the courtroom, watching the final act of the tragedy Derek Lawson wrote for himself. The gallery was full, but it was quiet. There were no supporters for the former sergeant. No blue wall of silence. That wall had crumbled the moment the live stream hit the internet. Derek stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a twitchy desperation. He looked like what he always was, a small man trying to cast a big shadow. The judge was a new one, a federal appointee with eyes like flint. He didn't waste time with speeches. He read the charges and the verdict. Racketeering, wire fraud, aggravated assault, attempted murder. The list went on for 5 minutes. Then came the number. 45 years in a federal penitentiary without the possibility of parole. Derek didn't take it like a man. He didn't stand tall. He unraveled. He lunged against his restraints, screaming. He turned his head, searching the crowd, until he found Rachel sitting in the front row. "It is her fault," he shrieked, spitting, as the marshals grabbed him. "She made me do it. She spent the money. She is the one you want. She is the witch," I watched Rachel. 8 months ago, that voice would have made her crumble. It would have sent her into a spiral of guilt and fear. But today she didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She just watched him with a detached curiosity, as if observing a specimen in a jar. She held Lucas's hand tight. When they dragged Derek out, kicking and screaming, she took a deep breath and let it out slowly. It was the sound of a heavy door closing forever. We left the city behind. We left the noise, the reporters, and the ghosts of the old house. I sold the cabin. It had served its purpose as a fortress, but Lucas needed room to run, not a bunker to hide in. We bought a farm 3 hours west, deep in the valley, where the air smells of pine and wet earth. It isn't a mansion. It is a working farm with fences that need mending and a barn that leans to the left. But it is ours, and it is quiet. The sun was setting, painting the sky in streaks of violet and gold. The dust kicked up behind the tires of the 2005 Ford F-150. I wasn't driving. Lucas was. He sat behind the wheel, his hands gripping it at 10 and 2, his eyes focused intensely on the gravel road ahead. He had grown in 8 months. He was taller, his shoulders broader. The bruises had faded from his skin, and the terror had faded from his eyes, replaced by a cautious confidence. Easy on the clutch, son, I said from the passenger seat. She is an old girl. You have to listen to her. Lucas eased off the pedal, and the truck rumbled smoothly over a pothole. He smiled a real smile that reached his eyes. I got it, Grandpa, he said. She likes a gentle touch. I leaned back in the seat, letting the window down. The wind ruffled my hair. I looked in the rearview mirror. Rachel was sitting in the middle of the back seat. She looked different, too. The gaunt, hollow look was gone. She had cut her hair short, framing a face that was still healing, but no longer haunted. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, no makeup, no jewelry. She looked like herself. She had a thick book open on her lap. The Body Keeps the Score. She had been reading it for weeks. She was seeing a therapist twice a week, driving into town to talk about narcissists and trauma bonds. It was hard work, harder than chopping wood. But she was doing it. She was relearning how to trust her own mind, how to make decisions without fear. She looked up and caught my eye in the mirror. She didn't smile, but she nodded. It was a silent communication we had developed. I am okay, Dad. I am here. That was enough. We pulled up to the top of the hill overlooking the property. Lucas put the truck in park and killed the engine. The silence of the valley washed over us, broken only by the ticking of the cooling engine and the call of a hawk circling above. We sat there for a moment, the three of us watching the light fade from the sky. You did good, Lucas, I said. You are a natural. Thanks, Grandpa, he said. Can I drive us back to the house? In a minute, I said. Let's just sit for a second. I looked out over the fields. I saw the fences I had paid for. I saw the tractor I had bought. I thought about the $12 million. A significant chunk of it was gone. The lawyers, the forensic accountants, the fines, the relocation. It had cost a fortune. The new farm wasn't cheap. Most people spend their lives chasing that number. They hoard it, they worship it, they let it define them. Derek had destroyed his soul for a fraction of it. He thought the money was the prize. He thought it was the power. But as I looked at my grandson, safe and whole, sitting next to me, and my daughter healing in the back seat, I realized the truth. Money is just fuel. It is just a tool. It has no value sitting in a ledger. Its only value is in what it can destroy and what it can build. I had used it to destroy a monster. I had burned it to buy justice. And now I was using it to buy the one thing that is more expensive than gold. Peace. I had spent a lifetime catching bad guys. I had spent decades in the dark fighting to keep the world safe for strangers. But the most important case of my life, the one that really mattered, was this one. Saving my own blood. I looked at my hands. They were old, spotted with age, scarred from years of work. But they were steady. They hadn't shaken when I pulled the trigger in that warehouse, and they didn't shake now. Grandpa Lucas asked, breaking my reverie, "What are you thinking about?" I looked at him. I looked at the future I had fought for. "I am thinking that this is the best view I have ever seen, son," I said. Rachel closed her book. She leaned forward, resting her chin on the back of the front seat. "It is over, isn't it, Dad?" she whispered. "Really over." I looked at the horizon where the last of the sun was dipping below the mountains. The darkness was coming, but it didn't scare me anymore. We had our own light now. "Yes, honey," I said. "It is over. The storm is gone." I tapped the dashboard. "Take us home, Lucas." He started the truck, the engine roaring to life with a healthy growl. We drove down the hill toward the warm yellow lights of the farmhouse. People say you can't buy happiness. Maybe they are right. But you can buy freedom. You can buy safety. You can buy a second chance. I spent a lifetime accumulating a fortune. I drove old trucks and wore old coats so no one would know. I saved every penny waiting for a rainy day. Well, the rain came. It poured. It tried to wash us away. But we built an ark. And as we rolled down that dirt road leaving the dust behind us, I knew one thing for certain. Spending every dime to get my family back was the best investment I ever made. The wolf was in a cage, the sheep were lions now, and the old shepherd could finally rest. This is Jack Sullivan signing off. This journey taught me that the most dangerous lies are not the ones criminals tell, but the ones we tell ourselves to keep a false peace. We ignored the red flags to save a marriage, and it almost cost us our lives. I learned that true wealth isn't the number in a ledger. It is the freedom to stand your ground against tyrants and the power to shield the innocent. Evil often wears a smiling mask or a shiny badge counting on your silence to survive. But silence is not a shield. Sometimes to build a true home, you have to be willing to burn down the prison they built around you. If you have ever had to stand up to a bully to protect someone you love, or if you know what it feels like to be underestimated, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments, would you have gone into that warehouse alone?